Russia once claimed its vast territory was untouchable, a fortress shielded by layers of air defenses, military bases, and sheer distance from the battlefield. But today, the skies above Russia are no longer safe. Strategic sites deep inside its borders, from critical airfields to massive energy hubs, are erupting in flames. Belgorod and Bryansk, once far from the front lines, are now active war zones. And the terrifying truth for the Kremlin is this: Ukrainian drones can now strike almost anywhere, and there's nothing Moscow can do to stop them. In the last 24 hours, Ukrainian forces have launched a wave of precision strikes on some of Russia's most sensitive and strategically vital locations. This wasn't just about destroying a few military vehicles or warehouses. It was about showing the world and Russia's leadership that their war has backfired, their defenses are full of holes, and their so-called special military operation has opened the door for the fight to come home. The first and perhaps most devastating strike targeted a military airfield in Belgorod region. This was not just any airfield. It's been a key launching point for Russian operations, used regularly to attack Ukrainian cities and frontline positions. The damage here is significant. Aircraft stationed there are now wreckage, and the facility itself is crippled. For Moscow, this is a blow not just in firepower, but in morale. Because Belgorod is supposed to be a safe staging ground, not a burning battlefield. But that wasn't the only target in Belgorod. Alongside the airfield, Ukrainian drones also took out a major training center, one that Russia has used to prepare soldiers for combat operations. Many of these recruits would have been sent straight to the front to bolster exhausted Russian units. Now, that pipeline of manpower has been disrupted. With casualty numbers already sky high, losing a key training hub makes it even harder for Russia to replenish its forces. And the hits kept coming. Another target in Belgorod was an arsenal, a storage site for ammunition and weaponry. Destroying an arsenal is a double blow. It robs Russia of valuable munitions and forces them to transport replacements from deeper inside the country, stretching their already strained logistics. Belgorod is no longer just a border region, it's becoming a combat zone, with Ukrainian forces not just striking military targets, but in some areas even controlling small pockets of territory. The situation is so dire for Moscow that even Russian pro-war bloggers, usually quick to cover up or downplay losses, have been forced to acknowledge the scale of the damage. And it's not just Belgorod that's under fire. In Bryansk region, another Ukrainian strike set ablaze a massive pipeline hub near the city of Unecha. This wasn't just any piece of infrastructure. It's part of the Druzhba pipeline, one of Russia's largest and most important oil transport systems. Ironically, Druzhba means friendship in Russian, but in true Orwellian style, it's a name that hides the reality. This pipeline fuels not friendship, but the Kremlin's war machine. By hitting this hub, Ukraine didn't just damage infrastructure. They targeted a lifeline of revenue and supply. The symbolism here is powerful. Russia has always relied on its sheer size to protect its most vital assets, placing strategic facilities far from the front lines so they could continue operating even in wartime. This tactic worked in both World War I and World War II, but Ukrainian drones have shattered that tradition. With the ability to strike 2,000 kilometers deep inside Russian territory, nowhere is safe anymore. Not airfields, not arsenals, not energy hubs. If Ukraine can hit Belgorod and Bryansk today, what's stopping them from striking even deeper tomorrow? This shift has huge implications for the war. Putin began his invasion in 2022 by claiming Russia needed to defend itself from NATO and Ukraine. Back then, the Russian mainland was far safer than it is now. But today, the reality is the opposite. Dozens of Russian regions are experiencing direct attacks, something the Kremlin never prepared its people for. It's also a direct humiliation for Russia's air defense systems, which have been unable to protect even the most critical sites. The failure is so complete that one could argue the only air defenses working effectively are the ones surrounding Putin's personal bunkers. That's right. The Kremlin may now be prioritizing the survival of its leader over the protection of its strategic infrastructure. And the deeper problem for Moscow is that they're not fighting alone, but not in the way they'd like the world to think. Yes, Russia has allies, Iran supplying drones, North Korea sending thousands of troops and ammunition, China providing technological and economic lifelines. This coalition is trying to prop up Russia's war effort, but even with all that support, they are failing to stop Ukrainian forces from bringing the fight into Russia itself. If Russia can't defend Belgorod and Bryansk with the help of Iran, China, and North Korea, what does that say about their chances anywhere else? These latest attacks also send a powerful message beyond the battlefield. They prove that Ukraine's drone program is not just effective, it's evolving at a pace few could have predicted. Drone warfare is becoming the #1 game changer in modern military strategy, and Ukraine is showing that it can use this technology not just to defend, but to reach deep into enemy territory and cripple critical infrastructure. And this might have a much bigger impact than most realize. The ability to hit faraway targets could change the way the world thinks about nuclear deterrence. For decades, Russia has relied on the idea that its nuclear arsenal and geographic size made it immune to serious damage at home. Now, small, precise, and relatively inexpensive drones are proving that assumption wrong. It's not just about winning battles anymore. This could reshape global military strategy for years to come. For the Russian population, these strikes are a wake-up call. Putin's narrative that Russia is liberating Ukraine and protecting its people from an outside threat is collapsing. The war he started to defend Russia is now bringing destruction inside its own borders. And unlike the Kremlin's staged propaganda, the sight of burning airfields and exploding pipelines is impossible to spin away. The irony is stark. Russia set out to demilitarize Ukraine. Instead, Ukraine is rapidly becoming one of the most technologically advanced military forces in Europe, pioneering new weapon systems and tactics that the rest of the world is now watching closely. Meanwhile, Russia's own military is overstretched, undersupplied, and vulnerable in ways it hasn't been in modern history. The hunter has become the hunted, and the hunted is running out of places to hide. The list of Russian regions now within Ukraine's strike range continues to grow, and as more strategic sites are destroyed, the pressure on Moscow will only intensify. This isn't just a series of random attacks, it's a systematic campaign to dismantle Russia's ability to wage war. Every destroyed airfield means fewer strikes on Ukrainian cities. Every demolished arsenal means fewer shells on the front lines. Every burning pipeline hub means less money flowing into the Kremlin's war chest. Perhaps most importantly, these strikes are a psychological blow. For decades, the Russian people have believed that wars happen somewhere else, on foreign soil, far from their daily lives. Now, the war is in their backyards, and it's not Ukrainian cities living in fear of the next missile strike. It's Russian towns watching the skies for incoming drones. When the people who started the war begin to feel its consequences at home, the tide of public opinion can change very quickly. From a strategic standpoint, Ukraine's decision to hit these targets is bold but calculated. By striking deep inside Russia, they are forcing Moscow to divert resources away from the front lines and into homeland defense. Every anti-air system guarding a pipeline in Bryansk is one less defending Russian troops in occupied Ukraine. This approach also disrupts Russia's logistics on a massive scale. Military planners depend on secure supply lines, fuel hubs, and storage facilities to keep their forces operational. Destroying those behind the lines forces them into slower, riskier, and more expensive methods of resupply. Over time, this can grind down even a much larger military force. Wars aren't just won by soldiers on the front. They're won by who can keep their army supplied. And right now, Russia's supply chain is burning. The question now is, how will Russia respond? They can't simply ignore the fact that two of their key regions have been hit so hard. They could escalate airstrikes on Ukrainian infrastructure, but that's a tactic they've already been using for months, and it hasn't stopped Ukraine's drone program from growing stronger. They could attempt to bolster their air defenses, but after years of corruption and underinvestment, those defenses are proving unreliable. And then there's the political angle. The Kremlin has worked hard to keep the war popular, or at least tolerable, at home. But as more Russian civilians see smoke rising over their own towns, that job becomes harder. Maintaining public support for a war is one thing when the fighting is far away. It's another when the cost is visible every day in your own region. These strikes on Belgorod and Bryansk aren't just military operations. They're signals to Russia, to Ukraine, and to the rest of the world that the battlefield has changed. Putin can no longer promise safety to his people, and he can no longer claim that the war is under his control. And this is just the beginning. As Ukraine continues to refine its long-range strike capabilities, more of Russia's most important sites will come under threat. The war is moving into a new phase, one where geography is no longer Moscow's shield, and where every day brings the possibility of a new explosion deep inside Russian territory. The burning airfield in Belgorod, the destroyed arsenal, the crippled training center, the blazing pipeline hub in Bryansk. These are not isolated incidents, they are part of a pattern a pattern that shows Ukraine can reach anywhere and that Russia's era of untouchable security is over. For the Kremlin, that reality is a nightmare. For Ukraine, it's a sign that their strategy is working. And for the rest of the world, it's a reminder that the war is entering a dangerous new chapter, one where the outcome could be decided not just on the front lines, but hundreds of kilometers behind them.